And this is reimagining the academic librarian role. So I'm quite intrigued by this at Cardiff Metropolitan University. So I'm delighted to have, just looking at here, I should just look at the screen actually and see there's Marie. We've got Marie, and also we have Aimee as well. I'm looking at my bit of paper there. Who are both, we've got assistant head librarian and also head of academic services. So thank you very much, and over to both of you.
Thanks, Biddy, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marie Lancaster, and this is my colleague, Aimee Jones, and we're going to talk to you today around the reimagining the academic librarian role at Cardiff Met University. We are a post-92 institution, and we are based over 2 campuses in Cardiff. And just to give you, see if the slides work. Next slide, please. Thank you. We're going to go straight into some library background. In 2015, we had a restructure and we were put into 3 service areas. So it was academic services, customer services and technical services. Then in 2017, we had a voluntary severance scheme. And this resulted in us having more academic schools than we had academic librarians. Since then, we've noticed pinch points, workload issues throughout the academic year, and we decided that we would take a pause, take a view, and see where we wanted to go with things.
Next slide, please. Okay, so the library academic services pre-pandemic. So this is after we'd been put into those 3 service areas and we'd had that VSS round, so we had more schools and academic librarians, and this is the picture of what we had. So as you can see, we didn't have an academic librarian per school. The numbers weren't numbering, which made it difficult for us to have the capacity to cover everything we wanted to as a service, to provide each school with an equitable service, to provide all our students with an equitable service. And as Marie said, we needed to reflect on this and see what we could reasonably do to improve this as a service and for our students and staff. Next slide, please. So as a lot of us did, I think within the pandemic and across it, you had to stop and reflect because of what that presented us all with in terms of challenges. But it also, as a plus point, normalised hybrid working. So we were able to make sure all our staff had kits so they could work off campus, whether that was at home, which we had to in the pandemic, but made it more flexible to work, as well as providing a service on site, which reflected what the teaching side of our school, of our university, was doing, with some of the teaching off campus as well as on after the pandemic. So as a library management team, we took the opportunity for a service-wide review. So where were all the pinch points, not just with this front-facing service and supporting the academic schools, but within our technical services, and again, the huge explosion in the already growing electronic content provision we had. Like everyone else in the pandemic, that really blew up. So again, the whole service, taking a view on where we were now, where we wanted to go, where the different trends were, and what we wanted our service to look like. And so after doing some of that work as a library management team, we then obviously had to consult with our HR, People Services Department, with our union representatives to talk through what our plans were to make sure that we were being reasonable in terms of our expectation with our staff before then moving on to the next step. Next slide, please.
Yep, so it's important to note that this was done as a cost neutral exercise. Nobody lost any hours, nobody lost any sort of their contract, everything else remained the same. What we did change is the way in which we work. So the new service areas, customer service became user engagement team, technical service became our content and scholarly comms team, and there wasn't much change to the academic services. We became the academic services team. So that's where we were under the new realignment. So next slide, please. So just to give you a bit of context, academic services team is led by Aimee. I'm the assistant head, and then we have 2 times academic skills specialists who then support our 6 academic librarians. Again, we have a mixture of full and part-time, serving 5 schools. Next slide, please. So what did we do? We decided to take a functional approach to the academic librarian role. So we split this into 3 areas: collections, liaison, learning and teaching. Collections, as you would imagine, looks after our reading list, but also our collection management across both campuses. Liaison works with school liaison, goes out to meetings and promotion of our services. And then our learning and teaching function delivers workshops, teaching across all of the schools at Cardiff Met. Next slide, please. So there were some challenges. There was lots of resistance to the change. It took lots of talking, lots of meetings, one-to-ones, listening to colleagues' concerns. There was some attempt to change our thinking, to present alternatives or to remain as we were. However, we didn't see any value in that. And we were of the opinion that this functional approach was going to give parity to all of the schools, all of the staff and all of the students. So next slide, please.
Oh. Okay, so yes, as Maria said, there was some resistance, as there is with any change. The academic services saw the biggest change with this realignment. So, you know, the user engagement, customer service stayed broadly speaking the same. And the technical services, they added a couple more areas like the scholarly comms, but not massively changed. This was really quite a big change, as our colleagues who are here attending as academic librarians may appreciate reflecting on maybe what they do in their institutions. This was a big change. So we took on board some of the feedback and we did talk through why we were maintaining the functional roles that we had put forward. We ran workshops to introduce the change and also to empower the academic librarians to engage with it, to help form what these functions would look like and could look like. We've shared like the top line thinking of what each function would be, but again, we wanted them to feel part of it at this point and build it with us and create what these new functions would be. Because as we could see from the very early slides we shared, we couldn't stay as is. We were not future-proofed in any way, shape or form and couldn't provide a service that was sustainable as we were. Next slide, please. So the timeline we were working towards, this change was first sort of mooted in around September 2021, but the announcement officially of this is going to be happening came in November 2021, with more in-depth information about where people may be changing teams, what things would look like and how we'd be moving forward. And between December 2021 and May 2022, this is when we as the academic services team ran workshops, engaged with the academic librarians. We ran several of these right through that time period. January 2023 saw the quote-unquote official new way of working, so things like change of line manager. So the teams went maybe from me as their line manager to being with Marie as their line manager. So that kind of button pushing within our HR systems happened in January 2023. And all of this planning, all of these workshops, all of these discussions and communication was with a view to then this academic year, September 2023, being the first real test, because that's another thing to acknowledge. We can have talked and planned and mapped as much as we wanted to, but until you're actually in that academic year and you're doing this and delivering it, you're never going to really know how effective it is. And then in January 2024, as a service-wide library management team, we sat back and reviewed what the progress had been since November 2021 to this point in January 2024 of full implementation of the realignment. So that was the timeline of the change. Next slide, please.
So how is it managed? So all all of the academic librarians are line managed by myself. However, each of the academic library management team lead on their functional areas. So as collections, that's my lead. I lead on that with the staff that are working in that function. Liaison is Aimee, and learning and teaching is Stuart and Chris, our academic skills specialists. So between all of us, we kind of cover it all. So that's where we are at the moment. Next slide, please.
So the big thing we want to reflect on now are the benefits to this. It was a bumpy ride. We're not going to shy away from that. But we have some very clear benefits now because we've got dedicated staff for each of these functional areas. So we're not asking our academic librarians to be all things to all people within their working time. They can just focus on the collection or focus on the learning and teaching side. So we have better oversight across the institution. We can take strategic consideration, we can ensure engagement or find where we're not getting engagement and do something meaningful about that. We're better able to join up our thinking to avoid constant duplication of tasks because, again, you've got all the academic librarians doing all the same things, all trying to attend meetings, all trying to order books, all trying to set up teaching sessions. And there was just a lot of duplication that didn't need to happen. So now we've got that much more, a better use of everyone's time is much more in place. And the parity across all the schools, because as you could maybe didn't quite see when we looked at those slides, we've had some staff who work around 16 hours a week. We've got others that work in 37 hours a week. So you're not going to necessarily get that parity of service, even with the best will in the world and dedicated staff across the institution. But with this change to the functional role, we do have that, or are better equipped to offer that now across the service. Next slide, please.
So some thoughts from us. It wasn't easy, but we had a vision and we stuck to that vision, and we are now seeing and delivering on positive change and positive results across all the functions. I've been at Cardiff Met, I hate to say it, 20 years this year. We have never spent our book budget in all of those years. This year, because we've had 2 librarians solely focused on the collections and building those collections around reading lists, half of our book budget was spent by December. And that is something that will live long in my memory as a positive, because it's something that we've always wanted to do, but never been able to. Yes, so we've got parity again across all schools and functions and at both campuses as well, because that was really important. And future-proofing, and whatever the future may look like, we are in a better place for whatever is next. And, just sharing here with you all today, we are currently going through another round of voluntary severance, which closed last week. However, if we lose people, we know we can operate in this new functional way, which means that we can still operate a service for our staff and students. So next slide. Yeah, so thanks for listening. Happy to take any questions here. And if anybody wants to get in touch, then we're more than happy to answer any questions that anybody has later. Very much.
Really interesting listening to that, because obviously at Northumbria we have a functional model, and interestingly, when I originally worked in the library, I was an academic subject librarian, and then when I went back on secondment to work as a manager in the library, we've moved to a functional model. So it's definitely something I think that quite a few academic libraries are considering because of all the reasons that you mentioned. So thank you very much for sharing your journey. because it is a tough one, I think, to go through. So thank you. I'm just having a look to see, we've got a few questions and we've got a little bit of time, so if that's okay. Hazel, I'll start with Hazel's first. She said, how do your academic staff and students feel about not having course-based academic librarians or academic liaison librarians? Is there a perceived loss of subject expertise?
Not that's been very explicitly shared. That I'd say, as long as we've been very clear with the academic schools and as much as we can with students, because I mean that's another holy grail, isn't it? Getting clear comms out to students, but that they have got someone who does have knowledge. They can contact the library. They will still get meaningful, productive information back. And I think, given through this academic year, I'd go so far as to say they probably had better, and that's not to do a disservice to any of the individuals who are focusing on a school in previous times, but because they're not trying to do all the things and juggle all the tasks, they now can get a meaningful response back around their collection or around their learning and teaching need, or can you attend a meeting? So I think they've seen where they may have perceived there would be a loss, it's actually not come to pass. It's not transpired that way. No, as I say, I'm sure there are still those who feel it isn't the best thing to have done, and we acknowledge that. It's quite traditional, and more traditional academics might view it as not what they would prefer, but it is working.
Okay, thank you. And Marie, oh no, Susie, sorry, I'm looking at, I missed one out. Susie said, how do your academic librarians now feel about the changes?
I think there is still a little bit of resistance, but in the main, people are happy. They know what their tasks are. They know where their focus is. And I think that was always the thing we were hearing. I can't look at this because I've got to do this. And then this piles up. And then it's all the things. So there's less confusion and there's less stress around the work. So I think that's been a positive for us in terms of like managing their health and well-being as well.
Definitely. And I think, I don't know whether this may chime with others across the attendance year, we've been asked to produce more evidence, more data in our decision making and things. And by working in this way, we've got access to more data. So whether that's for an institutional evidence base, or even again with our colleagues saying, no, this is working because look at how more effectively and efficiently we're spending our budget. Look how many more teaching sessions we've been able to do. So it's been able to do these sort of quantifiable measures that don't tell a full picture, but they give an element of a picture that we're also able to put together now in the new setup.
So we're going back to Luke's talk about data there, aren't we?
Some
common themes coming in here. Okay.
Data is king.
There's more questions. There's lots of questions. So we've got a little bit more time. So, hang on. I've just lost you all by closing that one down. So Marie says, how was it decided which librarians would look after each function?
Good question. So we did ask, when we were doing the workshops, we did ask the librarians to email us with what their preference would be, and we did stipulate that there was no guarantee that they would get their preference, but we would do our very, very best. Some took us up on that opportunity and some didn't, but we kind of looked at skill sets, strengths, opportunities, and matched everyone that stipulated where they wanted to go, went where they wanted to go. And those that didn't put a preference in were quite happy with where they were put. So I think you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make the horse drink. So it was, we, as a management team, obviously the four of us sat down, we know our staff incredibly well. We've worked with them for over a long period. We know where their strengths were. We knew where their focus was. And it was quite it was quite easy to map people across, and nobody got anything that they didn't want, which is good.
Again, this is a small caveat. We do have a small team, so we appreciate we are a smaller service with a smaller team of people. I can imagine bigger institutions, it wouldn't be maybe quite as straightforward, but it was, it wasn't too bad.
I think I'll just pick one more because we've got so many questions, and I would ask you perhaps to just have a look because
will do.
Lots of people have wanted to find out lots about this. This was sort of related to what you just discussed. Did people have, or do people have the chance to rotate roles? You've talked about people fitting into roles, but if they say they start a role and they think, oh, actually it'd be really nice to do this role, do they get that chance at all? Or
so that was something that was brought to us. Could we sort of rotate on a triannual?
Yeah.
On a
every 3 years.
Every 3 years, just saying. And it's not something that we are looking to do at the moment. That's not to say that we would never do it. But at this point, because we're so new into this functional way of working, what we want is for those doing, in those functional roles to be really comfortable, really confident. And we are seeing that now, rather than like, oh, let's change everything again, because I think, that's just going to do everyone a disservice. So we would never say never. But at this point, it isn't on our radar. And then especially now with our news that we've got another round of voluntary severance, we just don't know. So we could have to do a little rejig. We just don't know. But at the minute, things are working and are working really well.
Yeah, no.
Good to hear.
It was a consideration. But again, just to quickly put it, the other thing you want to make sure is that people are able to make a meaningful contribution within their function before moving on to something else, so that given it at least 3 years, potentially, you can see through a project before moving on to something else without getting 12 months into it and then being told to shift. So we did honestly think quite a lot about that. And as Marie said, we'd never say never, but at the moment, we're sticking with what we've got.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you. And as I say, there's a couple of questions in the chat that you might want to have a look at as well. So thank you for your insight there.